All right, so welcome to today's event. I'm Jason Gumpert from msdynamicsworld.com. I'm pleased to welcome the Solver team for today's session all about budgeting and Microsoft Dynamics. Our first presenter today is Anders Rengefors of Solver Benelux. It's a pleasure to have him with us. Please know that we do welcome your questions as we move ahead today. You can enter them into the Q&A block you should see to the right of the slides. Enter them at any time. I know Anders and his colleague Matthias will be making time for those later in the event. So without any further delay, Anders, I will hand it off to you.
Thank you, Jason, and welcome everyone. My name is Anders Rengefors. I work for Solver in the Benelux. And what we'd like to show you today is what we call a method of enabling world-class decisions. And what we will be showing is a bit about a changing world that we all live in, manual versus automated processes within our companies, an overview of the BI360 software suite of products, a demonstration which will be given by my colleague Matthias, and then a summary and questions. So we all live in a changing world, as you know. We use software to solve a lot of processes, and these software packages leave a lot of data across numerous databases on-premise and in the cloud. So we have a lot more data sources. We are moving at a faster pace. We need to make faster and better decisions because technology is driving us forward at a much faster pace than it used to be. Look, for example, as Uber versus taxis, Airbnb versus hotels, etc. It is changing at a very rapid pace. We also have changing roles. The best managers are no longer just looking at historical data and using tools for analysis, but they're becoming what we call futurists with dynamic budgeting and forecasting processes to help them and their organizations plan for the future. So the goal of this presentation is to show you how BI360 is a unique solution to help you enable world-class decisions in your organization. So what do we have today? What are the challenges? Well, in principle, we have what we call the spreadsheet juggler. This is a person who is trying to do a budgeting process and has to handle manual data loading, manually enter data into spreadsheets, manually distribute budgeting templates, has to manage the workflow manually, put in manual comments and line items, and last but not least, do a lot of manual forecasting and modeling. What we'd like to see is somebody move to what we call the decision optimizer, whereby using the BI360 software, this process can be automated and it can be managed in a completely different way. And here we have data integration, we have parameter-driven models, we have web-based data entry, we have a complete budgeting workflow, we have built-in commenting and line items, and last but not least, dynamic forecasting and modeling. Now, budgeting is just part of the process. Once you've budgeted, you want to monitor how well you are following your budgeting plans. So reporting is something that goes hand in hand with budgeting. And when it comes to reporting, we have what we call the sources that they have to consider. They have a lot of different reporting tools. And what usually happens is that they extract or copy and paste the data from their reporting tools into Excel to make their own reports. But this is a completely manual process. By using BI360 and the BI360 data warehouse, you have one location for all the data. You import the data into the data warehouse. You have one reporting tool that can produce, in principle, any type of report that you might want to. And you have one user interface, and that is our portal, which you will be seeing soon. If we look at the BI360 overview, we call it access anywhere, anytime, and on all devices. Of course, this is what you can expect by a modern tool, that it's totally device agnostic. You can see exactly the same information on any type of device. We have a number of core modules, and one is the BI360 budgeting, which we will be focusing on a bit today. Here we used Excel to design the input forms and templates. The input is, however, done via web-based input. Workflow is pre-built into it, and the integration with various types of ERP systems, such as Dynamics, is out of the box, so it does not have to be further configured. As a companion to this, of course, reporting. Again, the reports are designed using Excel, that everybody knows, but they are viewed and managed through a web interface. We'll be showing you a few examples of financial and operational reports, and these can, of course, be seen in web or mobile, whatever you wish. Again, they use the same out-of-the-box integration as with budgeting. Then we have dashboards. You can, of course, produce dashboards in Excel, and we'll show you a few examples of those. But you can also integrate with third-party dashboards, for example, Power BI, etc., to see various types of analysis and trends, etc. And last but not least, we have our data warehouse, which you can connect to multiple data sources, which you will soon see. It is easy to configure. You don't need to be a programmer to do that. And it's based on SQL Server and SQL Azure in the cloud. And it also has connectors to other data sources in the cloud, such as Dynamics 365. If we look at the architecture, this is a sample architecture. You see in the center we have the data warehouse that can connect to one or many data sources. The key is that it is not only connected to ERP system, but it can also be payroll, it can be your CRM, production systems, any type of data that you want to connect to. And then we have the three modules, the reporting and budgeting and dashboard, which reads directly from the data warehouse. Now, even though this is a cloud-based application, it can also be installed on-premise if you do not wish to run it in the cloud. And the user interface is exactly the same. So someone who wants to start on-premise can easily move to the cloud. And for the user will be absolutely no difference in the way that you work with the software. Okay, now I'm going to hand over to my colleague Matthias for a demonstration, so bear with me a second.
Thank you very much, Anders.
Hi, Matthias.
Hi.
Now Matthias should have
Oh.
control.
Yeah. Could you let me know when you can see my screen?
I can see your screen.
Perfect. So thank you very much. And as Anders just said, my purpose for the next 30 minutes or so is to show you a live demonstration of what the BI360 products look like. The focus today is, of course, reporting and most importantly, budgeting for Microsoft Dynamics. So I will highlight some of the key features we offer related to Dynamics, such as the live integration that Anders briefly described. And also that would, of course, apply both for reporting as well as budgeting. So there is a combination of possibilities as an end user with BI360, where you can have either each and individually live reporting and budgeting for Dynamics, as well as live reporting and budgeting with the data warehouse, or a combination of the two. So I would try to put most of my focus in what we can offer live on Dynamics, regardless if it's GP, NAV, AX, or even these days Dynamics 365. But the most important thing to remember from this session is that everything I will do is actually live on the ERP system. And we do offer out-of-the-box integrations. It's just a question about installing the software and installing the integration, and you will be up and running, building and running reports and entering budgets and forecasts live on Dynamics. So what you see in front of you is our current cloud service. Anders also mentioned it can be ran on-premise, and that is totally correct. It will look exactly the same as for the end user. So everything I will be doing today is live in our cloud solution, but it will be exactly the same features and functions if you run it on-premise. First, as an end user, I'm logged on to the web-based portal, and of course, since I'm logged on, the system knows who I am. You can have a customized starting page with a news session, if you wish, when was data latest uploaded, and reports, etc. And also in this case, we have chosen to provide a lot of demonstration and also educational videos, such as in a true customer environment would probably be a very easy and nice access to help and instructions of what the process looks like and how it's implemented in your specific solution. What I am about to do as an end user is to work within the top 4 menus here. I'm logged on as an administrator, so I can also handle some configuration around the data warehouse, user permission, workflow settings, but I will not go into depth into those today. But those are super user or administrator menus. But the end user, they will get to the home site, and they would have to choose between archive, if they have any assignments, and of course access the live reporting. So let's start by clicking on the live reporting, and what's happening now is I'm getting access to the full report library in BI360. So to the left is basically a hierarchy of different ways we have categorized all the reports. So the core functionality of the web-based portal is to be a report library for all templates in the organization. As you can see, I have a lot of templates here. But what you of course do is that you categorize each report, you structure your reports, and you set permissions related to these categories. So for instance, if I am a controller, I would probably only have access to the control report folder, which would give me a palette of these 11 reports. Another individual might be a financial manager of some kind, will see a lot more because he or she is related to more processes in my organization than I was as a controller. So again, these folders or these categories are fully customizable. It's fully under your control as an administrator configuring the system, and it can of course very easily be changed dynamically over time. But the report portal with BI360 is most importantly a report library with the structure. Going into some example reports, I'm going to go back to this financial reports category, and I'm going to, as an end user, say, well, it's the monthly end now. I'm going to go into my P&L report and look on my numbers for this specific month. What is happening now is that we're opening a template. It's going to be populated with data when you see it, but these values, these numbers are actually pulled in real time from the underlying system. That could be Dynamics or the data warehouse. So anytime any user clicks run, the numbers will be refreshed depending on if there have been any changes in the underlying system. So for instance, with Dynamics, if you create a new transaction or a journal in Dynamics and you click run, in BI360 the second after, you would be able to see the refreshed numbers in real time. As you can see, this report takes two parameters, one for organizational entity and one for time period. And of course, if the next month comes, I would just have to rerun the same template with the same entity, but for another time period. And of course, I would see the numbers related to that time period instead of September as I was previously. So now this report is processed and the numbers will appear. And you can see to the left that I'm now looking at October numbers, that I can very easily switch back to September without having to rerun the report. So this is a nice feature that can be used because, of course, if the numbers for September has changed, I would have to rerun it to repopulate it with numbers. But over time, once you have ran your reports, you can quite easily change between different views of the template that you had previously just by selecting another checkbox to the left. But of course, I can rerun it for a whole another entity if you wish. And I would also get the latest number for October, but now for another entity. So this is one of the core functionalities with BI360 is that we build, or rather the end business users, what we call super users or designers, they can build your own templates, and those templates can easily be uploaded to the portal and then be consumed by the end users in the portal. And a few minutes ahead, I will show you how you can actually build such a report or any other report pulling live numbers from Dynamics just by knowing Excel and going through 1 day of training. So the super users needs normally 1 day of training to learn BI360. The end users consuming reports, they don't need any training at all. They just need to know where to log on and how to select a parameter. So looking at this report that is now populated with data, you can see it's very Excel-like, and it's of course because it's built with our Excel-based designer that I will show you a little bit later. And the numbers in this report can of course be copy-paste because that question will always arise. I can always copy and paste, and I'm just gonna start a new and fresh Excel session and show you that it's very easy to copy and paste. If you for some reason want to copy some numbers into Excel, maybe combine with some other numbers or do some own calculations, it's quite easy. You could bring it all over to Excel by just copying from the web. Another thing you can of course do is to click Export to Excel. If you do that, you would get a full snapshot of this exact template with the numbers. It can of course not be refreshed, but it will bring you all the data into an Excel workbook. For instance, if you want to do some additional formatting or some additional calculations, you can quite easily do that as an end user without interfering with the original template. So going back to the report library, these functions that I just showed you would apply to any type of report that you have built. So for instance, looking at a slightly different report, it's also P&L to be honest, but it would actually bring me some values with some additional logic for creating what we call a narrative report, meaning it would use the values from the database, but it will put together a text saying that the net profit was certain thing compared to something else for the same month last year. This is actually also a BI360 report, pulling values from Dynamics, but we put it all together in a more descriptive way. So this is just another example of what you actually can do with BI360. Any numbers in a report is normally a summarization of underlying transactions in the ERP system. And of course, you can right-click, you can do a drill down. So in this case, I got a new tab with the drill down that brought me down to a certain account for a certain time period because I right-clicked on a number that was a summarization of transactions for that account and that month. In this case, it's only one transaction, but you can here see the full transaction details if you wish and it would be live on Dynamics. And normally, of course, there's a list of transactions, but in my demonstration, we only have a few ones for demonstrational purposes. Regardless of what number I am right-clicking on, it can also be a budget value. If I have my budget in Dynamics or the data warehouse, I will see a list of those transactions as well. And of course, the summarization of these amounts is the same as the amount that I right-clicked on in the template. So BI360 works with pulling numbers from the underlying system, rendering them through an Excel-based designer, and visualizing it in the web-based interface. So this is the live reporting in BI360. As we have discussed, there's also a possibility to have live or data warehouse budgeting in BI360. So going into the budgeting section, it would be a question of designing the template that should or would look the way you want it to. So in this case, I'm actually doing a forecast to the end of the year, and since I have run this in October, saying that the last actual period is September, this template will give me 3 columns for input, and it will show me 9 columns with actual. So again, I could right-click and drill down on the actuals to do some analysis, and of course to enter values for my budget, I would just enter values as if I were in Excel. I can even use a formula. So if I, as an end user, for instance, want to use a formula, saying this is 12% more than that one, it would be fully possible to do so. So data input is of course done directly in the browser, and whenever I click Save Data, these values are written down directly to Dynamics or the data warehouse. So the second someone as an end user has written back a value, those values are of course available for summarization and consolidation. So you can actually have live reports summarizing your full organizational budget in real time. Meanwhile, your end user are actually working with the budget. You can actually monitor your budgeting process or forecasting process in real time, which is of course a huge difference compared to working manually in Excel, where you have to gather all the Excel spreadsheets together. You need to consolidate them in some way. You need probably to correct them because some cell references is no longer the same, etc., etc. With BI360, we have actually tried to leverage on Excel-based interface for data input, formatting, and calculations, that we have removed what Excel is not good at, and that is to provide some kind of data storage. We utilize an underlying database for that. So in terms of budgeting, there is basically no limitation on what type of budgeting templates you can create. I will show you a little bit later some out-of-the-box templates that you would get, for instance, for Dynamics GP. But just to show you a few more examples of budgeting templates, I have one where I'm budgeting my revenues not by account, but rather by sales per product and customer. Just an example of what a budgeting template could look like. So in this case, I am a sales responsible. So I have a user permission configuration on what type of sales IDs I can use, and normally it would only be one, so I'm probably Kevin now. I'm using that value, and by running the report for that sales rep ID, I will only display the customers I'm responsible for. So of course we can be more sales individuals working in parallel in the same template, but for different permissions and thereby also different customers or products or regions. It's very flexible in terms of permissions. You can actually specify permissions and security on any type of attribute if you wish. So in this case, I have 2 customers and I sell 5 different products, and this budgeting process is supposed to handle the case where I should do a budget in terms of quantity and margin rather than revenues by account. And as a sales individual, this is more related to my everyday business or my everyday process, because I'm probably thinking in terms of quantities and margins, rather than in what account in the P&L those revenues would appear. So I'm doing my quantity budget. I think I'm going to sell this or that amount of licenses to this customer for these products. And I have a central price list that's specifying price per unit. So I cannot change that. In this case, or in this scenario, we have a central template, what we call for general assumptions, where the price list is controlled. So the price list could probably only be changed by the sales manager or the product manager, and I can only work with quantities and gross margins or quantities and a discount. Of course, it's technically fully possible for me or to provide me with an input for the prices as well. This is an example where the price list is central, but we would allow for the sales reps to do their quantity budget and, of course, to work with the gross margin. So I'm just going to add what I think I might have as a gross margin, and I would click Save Data. What's happening now when I click Save Data is two things. First of all, I'm, of course, saving my quantities and my gross margins per product and customers, which means you can have summarized reports showing you the budget on a consolidated level throughout all customers and see what type of volumes or quantities are we doing or budgeting with for next year. But at the same time as we're writing back the quantities, we're of course also storing the revenues on the P&L accounts. So once my storage would be complete, you could have consolidated reports both showing you the volume in terms of sales, could also be an input to some type of productional manager, but I'm also simultaneously writing back the P&L budget numbers so my CFO can have an updated budget P&L on a consolidated level in real time. So the number of different budgeting templates you could build is the same as the number of different reports you could build. It's basically more or less unlimited. The only limitation you have is that the data you want to see in your templates, for instance in this payroll template, would have to be in some system to which we have an integration. So normally you do not have HR data in Dynamics. So this would be a case where we pull the HR data into the data warehouse and build the reports and budget templates from there. But given that you have loaded any type of data, regardless if it's volume per product or in this case my payroll information, it can be used with BI360. So you are not in any way limited to only work with financial planning. We have a lot of customers using it for operational planning, sales planning, even production planning. And not the least to say, we also have customers using it for legal consolidation, where we can consolidate a number of companies on a monthly basis, having currency conversion built into the systems, including eliminations and other statutory consolidational functions that is required. So BI360 as a software could probably support your full CPM process, meaning reporting, budgeting, and consolidation. And it's a self-service tool where you actually have the business users building the reports. So the next step is for me to actually show you what would be required to build a report looking like more or less this P&L report. So let me go back into Excel. I'm going to close this one because that was just the export. I'm actually going to delete all of that. Let me just do it quite fast. So I'm getting a fresh spreadsheet and start with a blank paper. So as a super user, you would have an installation of our designer app or designer tool in BI360 called BI360 Report. And I'm actually going to build this P&L report live on Dynamics AX. So the super users or the designers are the only one that actually needs to have an installation, and the only installation they need is the add-in in Excel. All other functionality and all other usage is done through the web-based portal. I'm just now connecting to my AX 2009 database. And as a super user to the left, going through 1 day of training, I'm getting now access to all the information I have, in this case, in AX. It would look more or less the same if you're running it on Dynamics NAV or on Dynamics GP. And also, as I said, we have a pre-built integration where we can pull numbers from Dynamics 365 into the data warehouse, and the visualization of the data warehouse would also look the same. It's basically a box of information that I can use for building reports. So looking in my general ledger, for instance, live on AX, I can expand my ledger transaction, and I would see all the attributes related to those. Of course, cost center account, time period, etc., and the different amounts that I want to use for summarizations or calculations. I think the integration for AX, NAV, and GP, each an individual one of them, contains about 6,000 to 8,000 different fields or attributes that you could use for reporting. So for instance, going into the accounts receivable, looking at my order lines, I have, of course, everything related to sales. Of course, customer and customer-related information. I have information about the items I'm selling, who is selling them, and which sales unit, and of course a lot of more information related to that, average quantities, etc., etc. So what we are providing for Dynamics is a toolbox, first of all, of course, with a preset of reports out of the box that I will show you in the end, but it's also a toolbox where you're able to build your own reports live on any module in Microsoft Dynamics. So going into the general ledger again, I will build my P&L report live from the information in my ledger transaction. So what I want to do is I want to create something displaying values by account. So what I need to do is to drag and drop the account field. I will specify that it should expand by row. I would also go into the account table without having to worry about any links between my transaction table and account table and pull the account name. So just by dragging and dropping these two, I have actually created a template that would pull my full chart of accounts just by clicking run. And what I just did is a feature that we have available for the designers when they are designing their reports or their templates in Excel. So again, my template is just looking like this for the moment. You can always run it in real time just to have a clear view of what it will look like once executed. The normal scenario is then that you do like this once you are developing it. When you're done, you would just click Upload Report, and the template will be uploaded to the report library in the portal and be accessible for end users. So again, consumption is normally done by web, but the design is done within Excel. Of course, there is a possibility to keep your local BI360 reports just in Excel and run it for yourself, and of course share it with other designers. They can still run it in the Excel-based interface. Moving ahead with this template, I have my chart of accounts. Of course, I want to have some time periods in it. I'm going to have my time periods by column. And given that I have account and time period, all I need to do is to drag and drop the transaction amount in the intersection between account and month. BI360 will now understand that this amount will automatically be summarized whenever someone runs the report. So this template now takes one time period, and I would run it for 1 month. And once I run it, I will see the actual for that specific month by account. And for the moment, the chart of account is unfiltered, but you can see I'm actually getting values. And if I right-click, I can do a drill down, and I will see a list of the underlying transactions live from the AX database in this case. What I did was I would allow the end user to select one or more time periods. So if I run it for 1 month, that user would see one column. In this case, another user could simultaneously run the same template, but of course in a local copy or on the web for more parameters, and he or she would see more columns depending on what he or she selects. And these are the two core functions in BI360. When you're designing a template, you would create dynamic rows and you would create dynamic columns. So the report definition is still just one row and column, but depending on user selection, the behavior on the columns will change, and depending on the data in the underlying system, the number of rows will change. Everything dynamically. So speeding things a little bit up, of course, I would add some type of formatting, and you can spend more or less 2 weeks doing formatting in Excel, but I would just spend a few seconds. I'm going to add some titles. So this is account, this is account name. I'm going to do some formatting. I'm not sure what colors that you would prefer, but I try to make this blue and white. I'm going to format this section as a number. Let's make it a currency. And I'm going to remove the grid lines. So it's not complete as a P&L yet, but at least when someone runs it, it would look a little bit more formatted. So again, any type of formatting in any template that you build and then run and view in the portal, all that formatting is done with Excel functionality. The components in this template with the graphs, etc., are Excel graphs. The formatting, conditional formatting for red and green numbers or KPI indicators are also Excel formatting. The groupings, where you can expand something and see the underlying levels, is also Excel functionality, all being built into the template by the designer. So the final thing I'm going to do with my P&L report is 2 things. First of all, this is my full chart of accounts. I don't want that. I, as a designer, want to specify some kind of grouping. I can either specify an interval of account, which means if a new account is added within the interval, that account would automatically appear in the template. So you don't have to update the template just because you're creating new accounts in the underlying system. And you can, of course, create some groupings specifying individual members, in this case from my chart of account. But to do this a little bit faster, I will say all my accounts that starts with a 4, and that's going to be a subtotal for revenues. And to do a summarization in BI360, you would do it as you would in Excel. So all Excel formulas are also supported, of course, plus, minus, sum, etc., but also the more advanced one, count if, sum if, VLOOKUP, index match, all of that can be used for creating very advanced reports, pulling values in real time using BI360, but then adding Excel logic for creating the business logic you want to apply. So I'm going to copy this. I'm going to create 3 more groups or 2 more groups. So this is the first one for revenues, account group 4. This is going to be account group 5. The final one is going to be account group 6. So I have different groupings, which means this will be my COGS and these will be my expenses. And given that I have revenues, COGS, and expenses, I will have some kind of gross result, which would be my revenues, in this case plus my COGS and expenses, because my revenues are with a minus. And if I have a gross result, I will also have a gross margin. That would, of course, be my result divided by the revenues and formatted as a percentage. Final thing, I'm going to do some additional formatting saying that if this value is less than 0, my revenues are high because those were a minus. So I'm going to say it's good, but if it's above 0, it's going to be bad. So let's look at the report. Let's run it for 6 months. I have my summarization of revenues. Of course, this has followed the number of rows that I actually pulled from the underlying system, and you can see that my conditional formatting is also following my rules. Final thing that I will not do would, of course, to add some type of graphs or graphical components if you wish. You could add it to the template. Let's take that one. It would dynamically be uploaded and updated depending on the end result from the actual numbers being pulled from the system. And you can, and of course, you could have it formatted and positioned to the side or on the top or wherever you want to put it. So all of this would work together live out of the box on Dynamics. Going back to the final thing, I want to show you some logic around time intelligence. For the moment, I have selected one time period or more, and I have displayed one or more columns. So let's assume I want to display the actual for the selected month, or let's do it like this. So this is the selected month. I want to compare that to the same month as last year, and I want to calculate the difference. I want to display the year-to-date actual compared to the last year-to-date and the difference. This is a traditional financial reporting setup that quite many, I think, recognize. I'm just going to copy the formatting. And all I need to do is two things. First of all, I need to drag and drop the time period to these columns as well, because all of them have something to do with time period. So now I have 4 column groups, 3 row groups. I will copy paste the amount because I want to summarize these by my time intelligence functions, and I'm going to make this a little bit wider. So assuming that I have my actual for this month and the same month last year like this, my difference would just be the one minus the other, right? So we copy that formula into all sections, and then I would do exactly the same for the year to date. The final thing I need to do is to add some pre-built logic. So let's look at this column and said that this should be the selected month, and it will be filtered automatically by the parameters selected by the end user. Moving to the right, I say this should be the same month but last year. So in BI360, regardless of source system, we have a lot of pre-built what we call time intelligence functions. So just all I need to do is to drag and drop the time function I want to apply. In this case, this period last year. And for this one, I want the year to date. And for this one, I want the last year to date. This will let BI360 automatically handle the time intelligence calculations. And it would, of course, be the same if I'm working with rolling forecast or rolling actuals. I could display the previous 12 months or the coming 12 months, regardless of what the end users select. I could, of course, select them to be expanding, to always show the year-to-date as the number of columns depending on what month you select. Or in this case, where it's not expanding, it will be a summarization of those values. So if I run it now, I will run it for 1 month rather than several months because I have added the logic. So I'm running it for February 2007. And I didn't have any actual, so I'm going to run it for January 2007. I always forget if it's 2007 or 2006. Yeah, so it's 2006 November because I have values in 2005. Yeah. So what I actually did now was to run it. I'm displaying my actual for the selected month, November 2006, comparing it to my actuals for 2005, and of course calculating the difference. Same for year to date. And again, any value, if I right click, I will see a drill down of the underlying transaction. You can actually also have a link to a scanned invoice if you wish. So the designer, again, back to this, is Excel-based. The end user, the super user, would click upload, and you would upload this template to the reporting portal, where the end user would consume your numbers, regardless if it's, like in this case, a financial P&L, or if it's a sales report displaying the sales volumes and margins sold to each customer every week or every month, etc. You can also publish these reports either by subscription, meaning the end user will receive an email once you schedule it, for instance, once every month, showing each individual recipient his or her latest sales numbers or financial numbers generated for the last month. So you don't have to be an active user. You can also have passive users receiving information by email as a PDF or an Excel file. And we also have something called the archive. The archive in the portal is a feature where you can create a playlist actually generating a preset of report templates, all of these, for some specific parameters. So once you schedule this playlist, it will be executed automatically. You can see that all of these has already been run. So when the end users come into the portal, they click on archive and they can see that here are all my reports already being pre-ran, and I can view the numbers as they were when the report was ran. And the feature of this is if you want to have a controlled environment, for instance, you don't want to generate and distribute reports until you have closed your books for the month end. You can control that by creating what we call a playlist for the web-based archive, or a subscription for the email distribution, actually being in control when someone receives his or her report. So there are actually three types of users: passive users receiving information being published in some way. You have the live users running templates, entering budgets, reviewing numbers, doing drill down, etc. And finally, the third category are the designers that can create and change templates by working with our Excel-based designer. Going back into GP or to any type of dynamic system, we are actually offering a preset of templates out of the box. So this, for the moment, is our GP reports that you would get included in the license, that you could actually just install and run out of the box on your specific Dynamics version. So all of these are examples of things you can do. All of them are also parameter driven, but you can of course change it depending on your chart of accounts if you have a different hierarchy of structure, or just use it for inspiration. But all of these templates, I believe is between 20 to 30 for each system, can be run out of the box in your organization just by installing the software. Drill down always available, and of course for budgeting and forecasting we can offer a fixed price with a 5-day implementation in total, where you would get 2 different templates for input, one for budget and forecast, where you enter values by account. You have the actuals to the left, you have entry values or entry fields to the right. You enter your values by account and department, and of course budget year and budget ID. And all of these would work out of the box. We can customize them depending on your chart of accounts and of course your type of graphical formatting, including also making changes in terms of calculations that you would like in the template. But these templates with a 5-day project can be installed in your system, where you have a budgeting input template for your end user, you have a forecasting template, you would also have summarization templates, for instance this one showing you the sum of all budgets for all your departments that have actually started working with the budget. So whenever I would click refresh, these values would be updated in real time, giving you a consolidated view, and for the moment I only have budgets on one department out of the box. So that is an additional feature that we're offering. If you're interested in budgeting live on Dynamics, you can get preset package with templates, both for budgeting, forecasting and reporting. But again, within each system, the Excel-based designer is always included. So if you start off with the pre-built package that we provide you with in terms of templates, then of course you could change them, or more importantly, start building your own templates for your organization. Just upload them to the portal and let the end user consume the templates that you have provided. This is available live on Dynamics. It's also available with the data warehouse. It's not done within 5 days. That is something that needs to be estimated depending on what system we should integrate to. But it's a functionality for the end user, and the design of the templates is exactly the same. So that was a very brief overview of the BI360 components for reporting, budgeting, and to some extent the data warehouse. But it's basically more or less everything I have time to show you today. We have 8 more minutes. I'm actually going to stop sharing this. I'm going to hand over the presentation to Anders. And I'm not sure, Anders, did you have any more slides you want to present, or is it time for any questions if there are any?
No, the last slide was just asking if there are any questions. So I'd like to check with Jason if any questions have come in.
All right, so we do have at least one question, and invite anyone who's been holding on to any other questions to please enter them now. Anders, if you want to, perhaps bring up a contact slide or a final slide, feel free. So the first question here, are there any budgeting templates included with the product, which maybe Matthias has already touched on?
Yeah, as I said, for Dynamics, there are 2 templates included out of the box for P&L budgeting and forecasting, but as I tried to display in the report designer, that is also used for building and designing budgeting and forecasting templates, so everything can be customized, and we could add basically more or less add any type of budgeting template.
Okay, let me make a final call for questions here. That was the only one I had so far. I want to remind everyone that if you would please look for a survey when you depart today. We appreciate any feedback you can provide to us, to our presenters as well, on the experience today. Anders, Matthias, I am not seeing any other questions, so I think we can begin to wrap up. So thank you to both of you for taking the time to present today. Much appreciated.
Yeah, and thank you very much, Jason, for organizing.
Okay, and thank you to the audience for your attention today. Oop, Anders, I think we're having a little audio issue with you, but we will wrap up.
Okay,
here.
I'm here now. Sorry. Yes.
Okay.
Also from my side, thanks for everyone attending, and thanks to you, Jason and Matthias, for helping out today.
All right, very good. With that, we will end today's event. Have a great day, everybody.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.